been seriously studying the 9 freedoms, so there's a
Yeah.
whole lot in there about Kundalini too.
Yeah, well, this is really, you know what this is really? And it's, although Kundalini is all the energy in the body, but you remember the tapes that it's not to the public, but it's to like the inner, what did Dr. King call it? He called it they gave it to the mystic order. We call it the inner life.
Oh, yes.
This is what this is.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's more that than Kundalini.
Okay.
It's really about the constitution of man. You know, the mystic constitution of man. The way Dr. King explained that on that tape and go into deep and give all the layers and everything. Well, that's what this does, you know. But it's not recognized like that because it's in Sanskrit. Most of what he gives is in Sanskrit, so you have to kind of dissect it in order to understand it. But really, that's what it is. So, and then you can see when you go back to the 9 freedoms or the 12 blessing lecture tapes of Dr. King, you can understand it on a greater level because Dr. King, he simplifies stuff so well because I guess he understands it so much that it escapes most people. They don't see, but then when you connect these dots, you say, okay, oh, this is really advanced. You know, I see what he's talking about. So that's what this is really. And it took me many years to realize that because I started studying this maybe like 40 years ago. But it took me many years to come to that conclusion. So you had any questions from last, what we was here 2 weeks ago? So we could just go into the mantra? All right.
Why would mantra come after embodied consciousness? Why would mantra come after embodied consciousness? Isn't the soul use mantra to embody consciousness?
Yeah, but he was speaking more on mantra. Mantra is the tool of development. You know, that's why the soul used mantra in order to embody the consciousness, but the soul used mantra in order to elevate the consciousness too. So that's why it's so important. You'll see as we go on. Instead of just recreating a wheel, you can use this write-up from my book. Here. I don't know if that's enough for everybody.
Okay.
Did Jenna come?
You guys supposed to sign in?
I'm going to ask you to read, Annalise, so I don't strain myself. Can you read that? Yeah. You can read it. Then, if you don't have any questions, just ask. And as we read paragraph to paragraph, kind of go up. This is what I did is in order for Serpent power. I just want to give they go deep and there's a lot of Sanskrit terminology. Instead of going into that first, we'll go over what, I think I went over this with you all before. But let's just read this little chapter. It's more self-explanatory without so many Sanskrit words.
Okay.
Okay? Go ahead.
Ready? Why mantra power works. Mantra is a set of sound vibrations especially designed and arranged in a specific order to produce a tremendous vortex of power within the subtle and physical human structures and its immediate environment. The ancient yogi philosophies recognized the power of sound to be a wave of consciousness initiated from the start of creation. The first word, released from the Absolute, God, had the inherited ability to mold and shape the unlimited universal mind substance and universal prana into active manifestation out of a complete static state of endless potential. Therefore, all sound still possesses this inherent ability to activate mind and prana into countless forms, be it subtle or physical worlds. In the yogi metaphysical circles, it is said that the power of mantra is guaranteed when properly performed. Mantra is an organized set of mystical sound vibrations formulated by samadhi masters of meditation, or avatars. The spoken language of man are echoes of man's mind being translated from his mental bodies, or the collage of his mental thought forms that make up his mental bodies. The mental thought forms are energized bits of sound vibrations, nada, that mold prana or cosmic energies into active and non-active thought forms of man's mind that echo from the soul via the chakras or vortex centers of prana. The sound vibrations of soul are the mantric sounds interpreted by the soul from the spirit via the bindu component of the chakras, which is the point of man's consciousness. When mantra is properly performed, it has the natural ability to synchronize the pranas that flow in and out of the chakras, giving the user of the mantra an immediate release of synchronized pranic powers. These synchronized pranas create right karmic conditions that guarantee the intended mantra power. Now, what you do with this power is the thing that dictates the results. The ancient Tantric teachings view the all-pervasive mantra, the first sound or word released from the Absolute, as an all-pervasive power of consciousness, Chit Shakti. If we view the world around us, we will notice the evidence of this because we will see that sound is used in every aspect of our life. All intelligence is translated, stored, recorded, and conveyed by sound. Language is a science of organized sound that uses various letters to convey meaning and a form of pronunciation in order to communicate various levels of intelligence. Therefore, language is an instrument that uses the Shakti power of consciousness sound to communicate intelligence. Without language, mankind will fall back into the Stone Age. So the Eastern ancient teachings of mantra, sound vibration, taught that mantra is a way to bring the all-pervasive power of God's consciousness into active manifestation. They must have based this on close observation of the nature of creation. This may seem utterly ridiculous to some Western cultured people, but if they took the time to review the origin of this science of mantra, or holy sound vibration, in a mystic scientific manner, they would understand the secret power behind mantra. In the Western world, the science of sound is looked at from a purely physical manner. Sound is used to build effective and convenient methods of communication. Sound is used to diagnose medical conditions. Sound is used as a military tool for offensive and defensive. The government uses sound as an instrument to warn the public of man-made or natural catastrophes. Sound is used to entertain millions of people, and in the West, it's a huge industry for making money. In the Eastern world, sound is looked at as an instrument of consciousness that assists in molding, shaping, and sustaining life. The metaphysical science of mantra knowledge sees sound as something that originates from a totally purely spiritual source, the spirit, Purusha. This Purusha or Shiva source called sound into active manifestation, which is called Nada. The Nada sound is the vibrational signature of all things. It molds cosmic energies into thousands of modifications. The great secret of chanting mantra. Mantra, sound vibration, is an instrument used to control consciousness. Ordinarily, man's conscious mind is in constant movement, random thoughts moving from one level to the next, modifying itself throughout the human aura of man. This modification of thought waves in the human aura places great limitations on man's mental and physical capacity. These thought modifications are like thick, contaminated clouds of atmosphere that interlace themselves and surround the human aura. The chakras of man are like the receiving and transmitting centers of various levels of thought frequencies. With the human aura contaminated with various random thought forms, it inhibits the capacity of the aura from being a good conduit for the chakras. The same way the Earth's atmosphere sometimes blocks or lowers the capacity of radio waves during thunderstorms, hurricanes, and blizzards from passing through. The human aura has its storms, which are various levels of negative thought forms. These negative thought forms block the higher frequencies of the mind substance that's being received from higher frequencies of mind, substance transmitted from the soul to sustain and manifest human life. Therefore, every incarnation/reincarnation of man is severely limited by mind and pranic powers being blocked by karmic patterns formed by man's thoughts and actions within his auric structure. Mantra helps to control and destroy these negative and contaminated thought forms. Without controlling this thought modification, man can never tune into the higher frequency of mind. As stated earlier in the book, the Sanskrit word japa, that stands for chanting mantra, actually means that mankind can destroy all sins, therefore breaking the wheel of rebirth and releasing the soul of its gross earthly bondage through the constant chanting of mantra. Japa actually expresses its inner meaning in its syllables. The first syllable, ja, means to destroy the birth and death cycle of reincarnation, and the second syllable, pa, means to destroy all sins. The repetition of mantra stops this modification of thought forms. When the mantra is repeated and concentrated on, it brings about a direct movement of mind energy and the pranic forces within the human structure. The uniqueness of mantra sounds is that it comes from the letter or sound bits that make up the human chakras. So mantra has a direct effect on chakras, since the soul uses mantra to calibrate and synchronize mind substance and cosmic energies, pranas, within the chakras and human auric structures. Repetition of the mantra activates the synchronizing forces of the chakras and causes the aura to spin. This spinning of the aura acts as a centrifuge machine for the auric body. The spinning of the aura creates a gravitational effect on the negative thought forms within the aura by separating the heavy, subtle mental substances of different densities from within the auric bodies and removing or destroying negative thought forms as well. It is said that during the repetition of the mantra, the aura begins to spin and in this process, it creates a huge screen of protection around the human aura. This is why mantra is used by yogis as tools of protection from various kinds of concentrated waves of potent negative energy sent out from evil black magicians. It is said that on more than one occasion, people in the eastern and western countries have gone to yogi adepts or masters seeking protection after learning that they were under attack by some black magicians for hire. The yogi adepts or masters give them a holy mantra to repeat all night and day for protection, and on many of those occasions, the black magicians for hire are found dead from the reflection of his own evil power. The mantra screen of protection. This screen of protection, created by the repetition of mantra, also gives a free flow of purifying mind and pranic forces that radiate from the chakras and is received by the chakras. The yogi science tells us that during this time of repetition of mantra, japa yoga, the practitioner creates positive mental impressions, samskaras, within his or her aura. The aura becomes a positive conduit for mind substance and pranic force when this screen of protection is created by the repetition of mantra. During the chanting of mantra, the aura spins, and some of the negative thoughts within the aura are thrown off, and others fall down to the lower part of the body below the base of the spine. The repetition of mantra results in clearing a pathway of the major chakras along the spine to allow a free flow of energy on several levels uncontaminated by gross and subtle negative thought forms. This is a good place to mention once again that the Sanskrit word japa actually expresses its inner meaning. The first syllable ja means to destroy the birth and death cycle of reincarnation, and the second syllable pa means to destroy all sins. In other words, through the practice of japa, mankind can destroy all sins, thereby breaking the wheel of rebirth and releasing the soul of its gross earthly bondage. This is the great secret of chanting mantra. The purification power of mantra. When the screen of protection is erected from chanting the mantra repeatedly, a pure channel or conduit is open for a free flow of cosmic energies and various frequencies of mind substance. Each chakra level produces a particular power which can be unleashed through the practice of chanting mantra constantly with great devotion and deep concentration of the mantra being chanted. The chanting of mantra is the pathway to spirituality. The chanting of these holy names of God's presence, the mantras, will prepare mankind for his long journey back to the full awakening of God's consciousness. Behind every chakra, there's a great portal and vortex center of pure consciousness of the soul that manages the flow of mind substance and cosmic energies, prana, that structure and sustain the body of man. This mind and cosmic energies that structure and sustain the body are called the Auric body, and it's made up of tiny tube-like thin lines of sonic forces that extend from the chakra petals and surround the chakra system thousands of times in a geometric fashion. As stated in the previous chapters on the chakra system and nadis, these tiny tube-like thin lines of sonic force are the nadis that carry three types of energy flow: a negative or passive flow of energies, a positive or vital flow of energies, and a neutral flow of energy that carries both passive and vital energies in one direction. These nadis pull on thousands of thought forms made up from the thoughts and actions from countless reincarnations on the subtle and physical realms of existence. This massive mind and pranic structures that make up the auric body have been contaminated from wrong thoughts and actions that are the result of character impurities, such as desire, anger, greed, delusion, pride, passion, hatred, and attachment. These are the character impurities accumulated over lifetimes of reincarnations that interlace themselves into the auric body. These building elements within the auric body act as a bounding factor that cling mankind to the basic realms of earth. In the preparation of raising Kundalini, it is necessary to control the following named character impurities: desire, anger, greed, delusion, pride, attachment, hatred, passion, malice, jealousy, selfishness, fear, envy, lust, laziness, possession, deceit, revenge, guilt, and craving. These character impurities are the buildup of energy residues from the thoughts and actions of countless reincarnations on the physical and subtle worlds. These energy residues have settled or embedded themselves within the several layers of the auric bodies. The auric body is that subtle envelope of the soul that moves man's consciousness from one incarnation to the next. The auric body holds the energy signatures of every word ever spoken, every action taken, and every experience lived through. The residue of these experiences express themselves as personality characters that show themselves as desire, anger, greed, delusion, pride, passion, and hatred. These personality characteristics can be described as energy configurations that make up the outer envelope of the auric body and that have the ability to lock mankind into the realms of rebirth, samsara, the wheel of death and rebirth. Throughout this book, we have mentioned one of the great powers of mantra is to move, form, and shape cosmic energies into subtle or gross forms of matter, whether it be a passive or an active type of energy. This outer shell of the auric body interacts with the natural flow of the mental energies and vital energies of the chakras, which govern and calibrate all energy in the auric subtle bodies and physical body. Mantra calibrates and synchronizes the chakras. The power of mantra calibrates and synchronizes the chakras to receive and transmit mental energies and vital cosmic energies. I stated in the earlier chapters that the chakra components are made up from the spoken sounds of the spirit and soul of man. These sound bits or chakra components are the embedded conscious impressions of the spirit first and the soul second. These embedded components of consciousness make up the chakras. Mantra chanting stimulates the flow of power. This stimulation that occurs from mantra repetition, japa, can be directed as clearing a pathway for pure mental energy and pure cosmic energy by throwing off and burning up personality characters that have contaminated the auric body. The soul of man's consciousness is expressed and manifested in the power of Kundalini. In fact, we are taught from the teachings of Tantric yoga and Kundalini yoga that the power of Kundalini is manifested throughout the subtle and physical bodies with the use of a sound vibration that is emitted from the dormant state of Kundalini located at the base of the spine chakra. The birth of man's consciousness and the birth of the four aspects of sound all came from the dormant power of Kundalini. For further information on the subject, refer back to the 4th chapter under the title of the Four Aspects of Sound. The outer aura layers begin to spin from the chanting of mantra, and a screen of protection is formed that throws off, burns up, and filters mind and vital energies that enter and exit the subtle bodies and physical body. The nadis are purified through the constant chanting of mantra. The mantra's sounds excites chakra mantras and seed mantras within the chakras. The chakra seed mantras are activated and vibrate its mantric powers throughout the Pingala and Ida nadis, purifying the pathways, allowing the consciousness to ascend and tap into the higher frequency of mind and prana. The purification of the Nadi pathways allows a greater degree of pranic manipulation, increasing the man's sensory perception, bringing about a partial activation of lower chakras, which result in basic forms of clairvoyance. The chakras are activated through the constant chanting of mantra. As stated earlier, the activation and purification of the Nadi pathways help to bring about a partial activation of chakras. When a strong degree of concentration is obtained and mantra has come to live within the practitioner, then he is able to invoke prana to easily clear the Nadi pathways and partially activate the chakras to prepare for a conscious movement of the power of Kundalini. Eventually, Kundalini rises in its entirety from the chanting of mantra. When the practitioner can chant mantra for at least 10 to 12 hours straight in a deep, concentrated manner, he can begin to untie or activate and move the great power of Kundalini that lies dormant at the base of the spine. when this concentrated power of 12 hours can be placed into 10-minute spaces of time and concentrated upon the activation of Kundalini, it is said that this power can move up the spine. Of course, the activation of Kundalini should only be attempted under the guidance of a qualified adept or master. When the soul has activated the Kundalini consciousness into full manifestation, the Kundalini raises up through a tiny hollow and hollow canal within the spinal column that the sacred pure Kundalini power travels through as awakened consciousness of the soul. Then the soul hears the mantras chanted from the omnipresence of God with awakened consciousness. With this great love acquired from the soul, hearing these holy sounds from God that vibrate through our celestial host, the soul chants these holy mantras of the chakras with a heart full of fashioned respect. When the Kundalini consciousness of the soul rises, it awakens each major chakra it reaches along the spinal column. The awakening of the chakras moves man's consciousness from a limited, centered realm of consciousness to a universal or cosmic state of consciousness that recognizes all life as one unmanifested intelligence of the Absolute that lives through all manifested things. In the awakened states of Kundalini consciousness, man has purified his nadis and aura and has entered the deep states of meditation where he hears the holy creative sound of God being issued from the mighty creative being of the solar system, the sun. The ancient Tantric doctrines state that the creative word is the holy sound, AUM. The great master of yoga, known as Swami Sivananda, in his book Japa Yoga, a comprehensive treatise on Mantra Shastra, stated that the world exists in AUM and dissolves in AUM. A represents the physical plane. U represents the mental and astral plane, the word of intelligent spirits and all heavens. M represents the whole deep state and all that is unknown even in your wakeful state, all that is beyond the reach of the intellect. AUM represents all. AUM is the basis of your life, thought, and intelligence. AUM is everything. All words which denote objects are central in AUM. Hence the whole world has come from AUM. As soon as you sit for meditation, chant AUM loudly 3 or 6 or 12 times. This will drive away all worldly thoughts from the mind and remove tossing of mind, vikshepa, then take to mental repetition of AUM. The practice of chanting mantra, japa, is one of the great pathways to spiritual enlightenment. Chanting mantra leads to the rise of Kundalini, the sacred power that the soul uses to manifest consciousness. The great Western yogi, Master Dr. Sri Yogiriji George King, stated that there is only one reason that mankind is here on earth, and that is to consciously raise the full power of Kundalini up and down the spinal column, Sushumna, in a controlled manner. He also stated that once man has full control of this power of Kundalini, he can eventually, through ascension, break the wheel of rebirth. In the Japa Yoga book by Swami Sivananda, he states that the following about japa, or the repetition of mantra. Japa purifies the heart. Japa steadies the mind. Japa destroys the Shadripus, 6 enemies. Japa destroys birth and death, burns sins, scorches samskaras, annihilates attachment, induces vairagya, renunciation, dispassion, roots out all desires, makes one fearless, removes delusion, gives supreme peace, develops prema, divine love, unites the devotee with the Lord, gives health, wealth, strength, and long life, brings God consciousness, bestows eternal bliss, awakens Kundalini. Mantra is a great tool for spiritual healing. The power of mantra is an intensifying tool for the practice of spiritual healing. What is this science behind spiritual healing and mantra? Spiritual healing can be described as using concentrated prana to radiate the major chakras to bring about a balance and calibration of the cosmic energies within the subtle and physical bodies. Spiritual healing is a tool of service that mankind can use to lessen the sufferings of his fellow brothers. Through spiritual healing, man's ability to increase the flow of cosmic energies with directed, concentrated positive thoughts that are impregnated by the willpower to heal the broken parts of the mind and body. Spiritual healing is this positively charged cosmic energy that purges the aura of negative thought forms that serve to block chakras from its normal flow of subtle cosmic energies and highly concentrated mind frequency. Spiritual healing is every man's birthright. Mantra is the perfect tool for spiritual healing because it naturally molds and shapes the universal mind substance and the all-pervasive cosmic energies. As stated throughout this book, mantra possesses the power to purify the auric body of negatively embedded thought forms created by uncontrolled imagination and the wrong thoughts and actions. The whole chakra system is made up of mantras and seed mantras, which act as manipulating instruments on the pranic forces within and outside the subtle structures. It also has the same effect on the universal mind substance. Since most spiritual healing is done through the exchange and manipulation of prana, the practice and use of mantra is the perfect tool to use. All movement creates some level of energy flow, but the unique practice of mantra japa creates potent, free flow of cosmic energy, prana. During repetitious practice of mantra, the following things take place that increase a potent free flow of prana. The constant chanting of mantra channels the thought forms within man's mental bodies down one direction, creating a concentrated flow of thought energy. This stream of concentrated thought forms created by mantric sounds has a unique effect on the chakra system and the auric envelope that the physical and subtle bodies are tightly fitted into as it gains its valuable experience through reincarnation after reincarnation. The several major chakras along the spine emit various mantric sounds and bits of mantric sound that hold various levels of consciousness in place. When the practitioner of mantra chants mantra repeatedly in a concentrated manner, it ignites the mantric power of the chakras, unlocking the inner higher consciousness of man. This part of the consciousness controls highly concentrated level of mind energies and concentrated levels of prana that are not ordinarily accessible to us. Proper mantra chanting, japa, is like striking a match or lighting a cigarette lighter. You can immediately access nature's main course of power, fire, by creating the proper environment to bring together various earth elements. Sound is described as a vibrational energy into the ancient text of Mantra Shastra. When the gross vibrational signals come into contact with certain mental and pranic forces, they are ignited into a pattern that opens the doors to man's unlimited source of inner power. The spoken mantra sound is a gross modification of the soundless vibrations evoked from the spirit as the para sound that springs forward from dormant Kundalini power at the base of the spine. This soundless vibration modifies itself 3 times before reaching the gross state of expression as spoken mantra sounds. The first modification of para sound brings about instinctive consciousness. The second modification brings about subtle, embodied consciousness. The third modification, which is the 4th aspect of sound, brings about gross, embodied consciousness, which gives the soul the ability to exist and operate on the gross physical plane.
Any questions so far? It's like 30 minutes right there.
Yeah, there's a lot to chew on just with that.
Just to, I put this up, can you see that? This is the diagrams we use in previous classes.
It's a little blurry up there.
Do you have a, no, I didn't give you a copy. Cut off this thing of lights right here. No, the other one. Yeah. You see now? Yeah.
Since everything is sound and everything is mantra, because it all stems from the absolute which created it all to begin with, you could say that even the negative thought forms of man are created by mantra, right? Just a negative form of it, right?
Well-
Repetition of wrong thought and action, isn't that in a sense like a mantra, but
Well, not necessarily. I mean, yes and no. We're taught in the ancient teachings that the chitta, which is mind substance, universal mind substance, is radiated from these mahabindus, like the mighty sun and the galaxies and whatever. And when it reaches like a planet like ours, the chitta, when it comes into contact with us, it becomes, they rename it and call it manas, because this great holy power has been contaminated by man. So the manas, the manas is the thing that creates the contamination within the auric field. So of course, the petals on the chakras are seed mantras, and they were placed there by the soul, but the auric field that we contaminated actually contaminates the free flow of energy coming from those petals as consciousness. So I mean, it's the environment that we created that caused that configuration. So it's not that, although everything, when we talk about a negative flow of energy and a positive flow of energy, that's not meaning that the negative flow of energy is evil. The negative flow of energy is ultra positive, because you need that negative and positive in order to bring about creation on any level. So no, we're not talking about that. But it's contaminated when our lower minds get a hold to it. Also, a book that Dr. King recommended, The Nature Finer Forces, right? And the Nature Finer Forces, it talks about how the fall of man brought about the lower realms or the lower chakras. You know, the only reason why the lower chakras exist is because of our low state of mind. Our mind that we have contaminated, and we've chosen this free will that Dr. King talked about. And because before he described the Adamic man, base of the spine was actually the heart chakra. You know, because the lower realms did not exist for them. You know, so the lower chakras did not exist. So we created those lower chakras, and when you read the ancient books, you'll see these character impurities listed in those chakras. Not that the chakras are actually producing that, it's the mind level that we chose through our free will is producing those character flaws within us.
When we're chanting mantra, and we're pulling on that pranic energy, aren't we still pulling on manas to some extent?
You molding and shaping this manas.
So we're pulling it in, conditioning it, and kind of sending it.
Well, as I described in the book there, and I'm in that chapter there, that what you're doing, you're condensing it. It goes through this centrifuge type. You ever seen the centrifuge work? It separates different substance, and that's what you're actually doing, separating. And you pushing down that lower contamination of the samskaras that's been created within the aura. You know, that spinning actually molds that and make room for a higher vibration. Because as we're told that in all the books that matters, that the soul whispers this mantra in order to keep man embodied in the conscious 21,000 times a day. That's what Sivananda told us, right? That it actually whispers, and that's what the Vedas and Upanishads, they describe it. that this that this mantra, there's a mantra that's repeated in order to lock us into the consciousness, and it uses the different levels of chakra, the different chakras, in order to place that mantra there, in order to keep us in this embodied state of consciousness. Now that celestial song that this state of Kundalini produced is pure. It's not contaminated, right? But is the Manas effect that we have on the pure universal mind that actually contaminates it, through our wrong thought and actions.
So when we sit down and do mantra, we're mainly working off of the power of Kundalini as opposed to universal energy around us.
Well, what you're doing, you're synchronizing your chakras in order to raise your consciousness to a higher level by chanting those sounds. And you placing a limitation on yourself because you're chanting these holy sounds and doing nothing else. You understand what I'm saying?
So since we're not affected by manas at that point.
You're molding manas to a greater level. In other words, it's just like what Dr. King talks about when he say that you must place limitations on yourself, give up your free will in order to attain freedom. So that's what you're doing. You're giving up your free will by saying, I'm going to chant this holy mantra, in order to raise my consciousness, in order to heal, in order to send out power to the world or whatever. And that's what you're doing. And in effect, you're cleansing the Nadi pathways. You're cleansing your aura by doing that. You understand?
How does mantra relate to the silence? Isn't it kind of the same purpose?
Yeah, because you remember, if you go back, the para sound is a soundless sound. The first modification, the first state of sound that's talked about in the ancient books is a para sound. The vak, the sound that the AUM, or the creative word, it's actually a soundless sound. That's how they describe it in the ancient books. So it comes from silence. Why? Because silence is reality. Silence is the background of all manifested creation. It's unmanifested. So that's why they describe it as a para sound.
So when you chant mantra, you're basically preparing yourself to enter that sound?
Yeah, you have to cleanse the body in order for a higher consciousness to live within the body. So you have to cleanse your body of all this negative thought and samskaras that you build up for countless lifetimes. You have to cleanse. That's a whole, that's why the Buddhists and the Hindus, they go through this renunciation where they don't, they detach themselves from all of our basic living, this whole, thing that creates all those negative traits. They have nothing to do with all that. They just focus on being of service to the world.
Is it possible then to go into the silence without some form of mantra? In other words, you have some traditions that say just sit and do apana.
Well, mantra is, in other words, we're told that the in breath and the out breath is what? Is a mantra.
So they're chanting in a mantra.
Yes, that's the 21. In fact, doctors say that we breathe in and out 21,600 times a day. The yogi said that thousands of years ago that the soul chants the mantra 21,600 times a day, and it's expressed through our breath. See, we inhale, we exhale.
So just by breathing, you're chanting.
You're chanting, yes. Yes. That's what keeps you alive. In fact, they say it's the Soham mantra, but it's actually backwards in the Vedas or the Upanishads. It's actually backwards. You know, and then when the adepts or the yogis unlock that information, they broke it up and created the mantra. But your in-breath and out-breath is actually a mantra. And when the soul stops chanting that mantra, then you exit the body. You know, just as simple as that. Yeah.
When the yogi adept or master is finally able to enter meditation, like, does that mantra cease because they're entering that eternal state?
Everything ceases, but it goes on a different level. See, at that point, the yogi is taught to what? The yogi is taught to place his concentration on the petals, right? And he goes into a soundless state of chanting. And in actuality, it's stated that he places a meditation on each petal. And that's what fully activates the chakra. Okay, like the first petal at the base of the spine, there's 4 petals there. There's 4 seed mantras. And he meditates on that seed mantra in a silent, in this silence, with the soundless sound, or whatever. And he goes for each petal and does that. And then he moves to the next, to the sex center where there's 6 petals. And he does a meditation on each petal.
So when he enters a conscious state of death, that's what he's still doing?
Yeah, that's because he moved that energy up to the next level, and he began. That's what gives him the key to go to the next level. It is stated. Okay. But is moving that consciousness, and the consciousness. Remember what I said. What is consciousness? It's sound. It's sound. Anything that possesses this thing called consciousness, which is a limited state, is brought about through what? Vak, through sound. When you no longer need it, then you enter into the unmanifested state of the absolute. So it's silence. But anything on the other side, in the manifested world, is either soundless sound or sound itself, which is a state of consciousness. So this is just to show you this. This is the top, the jagged lines around the aura is the modification that's talked about in the Sutras of Patanjali, the modifications, the vrittis. And that's the thing that we created, these vrittis, these different modifications, which limit our sensory perception for lifetimes. For lifetimes. That's why, it's through right thought and action that stop this modification from happening, which is Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is action, right? But Dr. King said it best. He said it is pressure towards conformity. What is that? That's the proper actions, the proper thought, and the mental actions and physical actions bring about what? It ceases the modifications over time. Because why? Your consciousness is risen. And you don't create new crazy modifications because you don't indulge in certain things anymore. Your consciousness, your desire lead you to do other things. So that's what in the Patanjali teachings, it stated that we have to cease the modifications in order to control our state of mind, and that's one way of doing it is through modifying our thought and actions and eliminating these 20 impurities in our life. Any other questions? Mm-hmm.
Do they all have that same state effect, or
I mean, all of them have that, all mantra has that same effect. All mantra does. Some mantras are more potent than other mantras. You know, of course, we know the yogis who can go into deep samadhi can formulate those very powerful mantras in order to, and balance mantras that can help us evolve out of the state of limited consciousness we're in. So yes, they have those effects. And it depends on your level of concentration, your level of pronunciation, you know, and doing the right things that can tap into that power. Just like anything. Yeah.
The only comment I have to make about it all
Mhm.
is, I think it's the motive that you have
Yeah.
when you set out to do a practice that makes a world of difference to the result you get.
That's right. That's right thought and actions.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, not a negative thought of actions, not a negative frame of mind.
That
Not-
you
yeah.
establish
Yeah.
your motive at the beginning.
Right. Intent is the thing that creates the right action. And you know, I tell you all that all the time. But Dr. King talks about the 3 forms of magic, where your intent is the thing that creates the powerful magic that you're trying to create. Because every action is a magical action. You know, the right intent. And by eliminating these type of impurities, you will have the right intent. You know, it doesn't have you to go down the road of selfishness or whatever. The right intent is really, because when you look at nature, all things in nature does what? It serves. You know, and that's the thing that will lead us to the higher states or the higher spiritual states through service. Any other questions or comments?
Mine is from the book. This is an excerpt from the book.
Yeah, it's an excerpt from, I think it's 12, it was chapter 11. Yeah. No, from my book.
That's pretty good.
That's from my book. I mean, we'll go into this, but I got to put together the glossary. I got to put together the glossary for this. Although I covered a lot in this, in that little write-up. There's 2 write-ups, but I only brought 1 today. Because I mean, you all would have been totally confused if we would have read this out. If you didn't read it before you came to class. And you didn't look at the glossary. So is there any other questions?
mantra molds and shapes, mantra can mold and shape prana.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be respective pranas have different qualities and
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to produce a particular effect, like in Serpent Power, it talks about using the power mantra to light the flame.
Mm-hmm.
How is that gone about? Is that you call upon that particular prana? Is it give it a directive to do that, or?
Why are you always asking these? What you need a lighter flame for? Why not just go through the basic? Is I tell you, it is the mantra. It's not the likely mantra you think it is, but no, I'm not going to tell you the mantra, but I'm going to tell you the chakra that it comes from, and then you can figure out where the mantra comes from. It actually comes from the solar plexus center. It's the mantra that governs the solar plexus center. All right. Now you remember with every prana or tavic ray of the pranas, right? There's divas there. And you have to give the diva the proper energy configuration in order to light the fire for you. All right, so this is kind of dangerous to, if because remember what Dr. King said, you make a mistake and what happens? You die in two worlds. So, I mean, why bother? Just move on until you have the proper knowledge. Proper ability. Huh?
He said, no, he's the only one I was curious about that. Everybody wondered that at some point.
So there's no other questions? Was this good enough? Because I didn't want to go deep into the book.
They are pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot to chew on.
Yeah.
What we read already.
So we got like 3 more weeks in this, and no mantra. That's what the schedule say. Yeah.
In there you mentioned how when the centrifuge effect goes into effect, the negative thought forms could either fall off the aura,
Mm-hmm.
or they can get pushed down to the lower chakra. That was the first time I ever heard that. Why and how?
No, I told you that many a times.
Well, like caught it, I guess.
Yeah, because
Why did it push down to?
because some of the samskaras or negative thought forms you have placed in your aura, comically, some of them can't be burnt up right away. You have to live through that. So when you go back to another level of when your consciousness go back down into the state that it was in again, maybe you'll soften the blow, but you're going to get the blow until you do the right thing.
But why is it possible it can be pushed down and then eventually, but continue to chant eventually?
Eventually, yes. I mean, the Sivananda, Sivananda goes into his book and he say that you have to chant the mantra millions upon millions of times in order to burn up certain negative karma, like murder. And when you do the calculation, it's probably like 10 years. 10 years of chanting mantra and giving service. So, I mean, it's other than that, you're just not going to sit down. You're not going to go kill somebody and then sit down and chant mantra for a couple of hours and think everything will be all right. No, you have to give a lifetime. So after the war, he was in that book. It's a good book. You should get the book. I mentioned it in there in the write-up. It's the Japa, a comprehensive treatise on mantra, on chanting mantra, and he gives different formulas for different for different terrible acts that people did. And then he gives a little story about it. And he said after the war, after World War II, I don't know if it was World War I or World War II, but because I think he lived through both wars, he said that soldiers would come, asking for a way to cleanse themselves over the things that they did once they realized that it was wrong. And he would give them a formula of how to chant earnestly to burn up the negative karma. But when you do the thing, it's like, ooh, this is,
They say it was like 8 million times.
it was more than 8 million. It was a lot. It was more than 8 million. Go and read the book. I don't want to give you the exact number, but it was more than 8 million.
He quotes it in Mala. Quotes it in Mala.
Yeah,
The malas have 108 deeds.
yeah,
So it's like 17 million Malas.
yeah. More than that, I think it was like 17 what?
17 million Malas.
Something, maybe that was it. But it's a lot because you have to do the calculation. So, but what it does, it clears the pathway to allow you at that particular time to push out concentrated positive energy. And I believe that's why Dr. King used it, for Operation Pearl Power and all the things, because you could see the effect. You immediately see the effect when you start chanting a mantra, especially when you raise your hands. You can just feel the energy coming out, because your mind is, it does everything. It's like a trigger when you go and chant a mantra and start doing it. If there's no more questions, we can close out with a prayer.
I don't have a question, I really just have a comment.
Yeah.
A part in the book.
Mhm.
This part in
Yeah.
particular was one of my favorites
Mhm.
because it really pushes why we try to avoid modifications. And it says, when an object is presented to the mind and perceived, the latter is formed to the shape of the object perceived. Focus a lot.
Yeah.
This is called the mental variety or modification, which is the object of yoga to suppress. And then he says later on, when the mind perceives an object, it is transformed into the shape of that object. So the mind which thinks of the divinity, which it worships, is at length, through continued devotion, transformed into the likeness of that devata. By allowing the devata thus to occupy the mind for long, it becomes as pure as the devata.
Yeah.
So I think that's so important. And Yoga really talks about that. Correct. So every modification that you have is because you're looking at things. So stop the modifications and focus on one thing at a time. So if you constantly focus your mind on the divine, your mind takes on that sattvic quality.
That's one of the things Contamination is just getting to.
Mhm.
The observer effect, when you perceive something, you expect it to be something, so it becomes that.
Yeah. So he basically just talks about that and defines that, how the mind is both cognizer and cognized, revealer and revealed,
Yeah.
denoter and denoted.
The messenger says the word is the word because it believes the word.
Yep. And a few words instead of 2 pages, huh? Okay, that's it. Let's go ahead and close out with a prayer.